If anyone, thinks that girls cannot compete or do things at levels that are just insanely amazing, they're just not paying attention to what's happening with all sports out there. What I would give is my dad was the leader. So people said, how did your dad raise Jill to be so confident? And he said, I don't understand the question because I raised you guys all the same. I raised you guys the same, but embracing uniqueness and embracing that there are things that girls do that guys don't do, but they can, and vice versa.
Hey guys, welcome to the 8th episode of the Story Project podcast. I am your host, Joanna Scott, and I'm so excited to introduce you guys and welcome my guest, Dr. Paul Goodman. Thanks for being here.
Oh, love being here, Joanna. It's awesome what you're doing. Sharing stories is one of my favorite things to do. Excited to talk.
Awesome. Well, if you don't know Paul Goodman, then in my opinion, you are living and have been living under a rock. So here's my quick, brief bio. Paul Goodman is a family guy with a beautiful wife, Mary. I had to mention her. She's one of my favorites. They both have 2 adorable daughters. He's also the founder and creator of the Dental Nachos community, all while being a practicing dentist. I have to point out to our guest and audience listening, and I mentioned this to you a minute ago, you're the first guy on the Story Project.
I feel honored. My grandmother's right. I'm very special.
You are. Yeah. How do you feel about that? Do you feel okay?
It was very on brand for me because my life is surrounded by women. At my dental office, 20 women, Dental Nachos. We got 2 guys, 7 women. In my home, 1 male, 3 women. So I'm very comfortable, very on brand for me.
Because I know you're a champion of empowering women, you respect women, you're raising little girls, and you have a beautiful wife. I was like, this fits you. We can do this.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, I want to share how we first met. Actually, my good friend, Kira Dent, introduced us. And then I jumped on a call with your team, got to know you and your team. And then we actually really connected relationally at the Smiles at Sea event in April with you and Mary. And we got to go to, I actually looked it up I was trying to remember the name of the restaurant because the food was really good.
Oh, I liked it. Yeah. It was great for you and Mary. They had a lot of good stuff you guys liked.
It was called 3 and Number 3 Social. Anyways, in Miami. It was a really cool, it was like that art district area.
Yeah.
That was sweet. That was really fun. And then after that, the rest is history. I told Josh, I was like, we finally found a couple in dentistry we can hang out with.
Yeah, I loved it.
Awesome. And then I'll mention this. Studio 88 has loved being a sponsor, a key resource sponsor for Dental Nachos. And that's been just awesome to get to know your community and what you guys are all about. So
we appreciate all the things you guys do. Our motto is if it doesn't help, it doesn't matter at Dental Nachos. You guys do so many things to help dentists with morale, with making more money, with getting the story out there. So we just appreciate having you as just an amazing topping and also friends as part of our dentisting world.
Awesome. And I've learned a lot of the terminology.
Yeah.
Now I get it. It took me a minute, but now I get it.
Yeah. I think,
we're talking.
Right. I mean, it's a way to increase efficiency, even though if it causes a confusion initially. So when you can develop your own language, I mean, I played a lot of sports growing up. I even brought my basketball. I know Josh is a big basketball fan, and sports teams have plays, you have signs, you have ways to communicate so the other team doesn't realize or move faster. And then I just think it's memorable and fun when we have a lot of acronyms. So yeah, you're doing a great job learning the nacho language.
No, it's unique. It's you talk about custom, that you guys have your own custom language. So I'm a huge fan of that. It's awesome. All right. Well, every guest that I have on the Story Project, I like to kind of do a little icebreaker and just ask a few fun questions to get to know you a little better. So Paul, name one word that would describe you in high school.
For me, talkative is really the word that's probably not surprising. I was voted most talkative. I wanted to be voted best dressed, but my friend won that. It was a neck and neck competition. So I was always somebody who was the type of person where people were always like, you should run for student council president. You should be involved with this. I'd say my motto is to kindly annoy people into good ideas. Sometimes I say regular annoy people, but I just really enjoy being around people. I enjoy connecting with people. I had the most amazing mom. Unfortunately, she passed away when I was 20, but the stories her sisters would tell her about her, and I probably didn't honor this as well as I could, but I tried to. She was as nice to the most popular kid in school as to the person who, played in the band and no one knew. No judgment on band people. I know you guys just went to a great concert, but that really meant a lot to me. And she would basically, train me to do that, how important it is to acknowledge everybody, with these cliche stories now, from the person who cleans the school to the principal. So I strive my best, but junior high and high school is a tough time for everybody. So it's not like we all get it perfectly, but those are sort of the foundational principles of always be connecting. That's one of our ABC words, always be caring. So talkative would be that word for me.
That's awesome. Well, that was my guess for you, but I also didn't know you in high school. So.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the craziest thing you've seen from a patient as a dentist?
I mean, their patients come in with very unique stories. And by stories, sometimes they lie about their previous dentist. So, the craziest thing patients have done, I'm going to pull up some of my notes here as I did it, because I know I said this. I want to, if you could remind me on my notes there, Joanna, did I give you a good story? Because I'll think of one here in the moment. I don't know if I gave you one when we were doing it, because I'll come up with a good one. One of the craziest stories that are the foundation of my communication story is that one time when I was 31 years old, was seeing a new patient. And we have the system for new patients. We fill out an orange sheet and we process it. And they give us a little info. This was like 13 years ago, not really a lot with computers besides this Dentrix. So I'm looking at this orange sheet and it says bridge is out. And I come around the corner and the patient's not sitting in the chair. So I know you're not a dentist, Joanna, but people usually sit in the chair. So when someone is not sitting in the chair, it's a red flag, right? So he's standing up, pointing at his mouth, saying, this bridge fell out. Can you believe this bridge fell out? And I was just like, hey, I'm Dr. Paul. I want to try to help you. So I asked him a question that I thought anyone would ask, dentist not. He's furious. This last dentist didn't tell me this was permanent. So I just said, how long ago did the dentist do it? You know what he said? 25 years. So I wanted to stand up for dentistry. It's one of the things I do, stand up for dentists and dentistry. So in that moment, even though he's my new patient I never met, I want to kindly annoy him. I said, oh, wow, 25 years. You eat 1,000 meals a year. That's 25,000 meals. And I say, how many cars have you had in that time? So really one of the craziest stories that really is one is patients' unrealistic expectations about what can be done in a dental office. And I always say dentists are too good. We put things in people's mouths that they eat pizza with. They eat Jolly Ranchers, which is just a rock. A Jolly Rancher is a rock. And it lasts, but they have unrealistic expectations. I mean, I'm sure there's sneakers that Josh has that only wears once a year because he doesn't want to wear them out, right? So if he wore his best Jordans every single day, and 3 years we went back to the store and said, can you believe how dirty and worn out they are? The store would be like, yeah, you wore them every day. Yeah. So really that is one of my craziest dental stories, if that patients, being incredibly emotional about things that go really well, right? So that's one of mine.
That's awesome. Wow. I don't know how you guys, how the docs do it sometimes, because that would annoy the daylights out of me. You guys are great.
I appreciate that. And I want to just add in, I've used this before. So I had a periodontist friend who we went to college together, worked in our office. We've just been friends forever. And we sometimes say we go home from our offices and our spouses don't really know how tough it is because, I even remember this from my mom and dad, my dad who was a dentist. Your father gets to work in air conditioning with patients. I'm home with the kids. Everyone kind of has their own things, but you don't really realize somebody's life. And this is the word that I would use. And if you put anything in show notes is dentists and teams, especially dentists, have to deal with so many microaggressions at them each day, from cost to how long it takes, to the pain. I mean, what you guys do for dentists is awesome with your websites, but it's so neat and clean. We are Studio 88. We do this thing. Do you want to do this thing? Yes or no, right? We deal with so many microaggressions on our current customers, right? They're on this journey with us, but there's so many different things along this journey where they say, why is this expensive? Why is this? I don't want to sit for this. And it just really can wear on you and make you burn out internally, because that's where you got to keep your crying, Joanna, when you're a dentist, on the inside. You can't cry outside, on the inside. So, yeah.
So what do you do to unwind and relax, Paul Goodman?
I appreciate it. People ask me that a lot. And they ask me that because I'm a big fan of Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V, and I think I have a lot of similarities to him. I was on Tea with Gary V, which was a huge honor for me. I admire what he does, but he talks fast like me. You know, I don't curse quite as much as his publicly. Doesn't mean I ever do that privately. But I really am excellent at relaxing. So in baseball, you're a switch hitter, you can hit from both sides of the plate. And I believe that while I have tremendous amount of weaknesses, I lose my AirPods while they're in my ears, I can't cook anything. I am an extrovert that can be introverted without a problem. I can be at parks reading a book. At night, I can be watching TV, relaxing, reading books. So I like to read. I love comedy. You know, when you ask someone with a 3 and a 7-year-old, what do you do to unwind? You're like, what do you mean by that question? Because I think this is the best time in my life that I'm not going to ever wish to necessarily get back. And I think this is an interesting thing people say to parents because they gaslight you. I'm in the park with Drew. She's dressed up as a bat. I'm holding her. People say, this is the best time of your life, Paul. You have a 3-year-old. Now they make you feel weird. They're like, you better enjoy it. And I go, oh man, am I not enjoying this enough? But then I say to them, hey, Joanna, how old are your kids? You go, 18. I go, oh, do you wish they were 3 again? You go, oh, no, right? So I think what's funny is, in an authentic way, is that when you have 2 children in your house that live that are under the age of 10, you're not supposed to have too much relaxing time, and that's the way it's supposed to be. But reading, comedy, I like to go out to eat at a lot of different restaurants. I love food, so those are things I do to relax.
That's awesome. Well, speaking of your kiddos and family, before we get into the dentistry or dentisting side of your story, tell us a little bit about, where did you grow up? Are you a native to Philly?
Yeah, it really, so I'm a native, where I'm standing right now, I'm a native to these 45 miles since my birth. So I grew up in central New Jersey. New Jersey has its own nuances. There's North Jersey, New York Giants fans, Central Jersey, you're not either Giants or Eagles, and then South Jersey, definitely Eagles fans. So we have 3 parts of that. So central New Jersey, right close to Princeton, called Pennington, and Ewing is where our practices are. I loved my upbringing. I'm so grateful. One of my favorite podcasts is How We Built This, and the Peloton founder is on that. And I find a lot of similarities to his story. I don't have a $1 billion company. That's one small difference. But he started in his early 40s. His wife thought he was nuts, things like that. But at the end of that podcast, they said, who do you have to thank? He said, my mom and dad, for this. So I would say the same thing. You know, my upbringing, I'm so lucky. We talk about the accidents of our birth. I didn't do anything special to be born to amazing people. So I love that upbringing in central New Jersey, but I never want to move back there. And this is why. So I love Center City, Philadelphia. Cities to me is like having your own friend on call at all times. I love the ability to walk to places. So I now live in Center City, Philadelphia. I commute to my office. So I went from the traditional New Jersey suburbs life right into the center city life. So now I've done that more than I've been in the suburbs. I left the suburbs when I was, 19 and went 45 miles away to center city. So I love the Northeast way of being close to a lot of things, being close to New York, being close to New Jersey, cities. I really enjoy the food. I love the museums. I'm a very hands-on dad, and I love being a dad, but like, if you made me dress Drew and Daphne for the week, I would just mess it up, right? Like I know I can identify where all their clothes are, but like I can't do it like Mary, right? So when Mary was one time not feeling well over a holiday weekend in December when we just had Daphne, I will never forget that I took Daphne out of the house when she was 1, and we went to restaurants and watched football together and eat French fries, and just I felt like the city of Philadelphia was my friend. So that's how I feel about living here.
That is awesome. I love Philly, and man, they've got some good food there.
Yeah.
Legit. So how did you meet Mary?
Mary and I actually met. It sounds like an easy way now, but we met online, Match.com. What's crazy about this is this was before smartphones, Joanna. So Match.com was quaint. Mary only lived a few blocks from me. We never saw each other on the street. That's how crazy Philly is sometimes. And she was from her college. She was only kind of hanging out with people from her college who want to expand her horizons. So we met in 2009. So, we're like 13, 14 years in to this long-term hangout session. And we have a lot of the same interests, but we also have complement each other well. I think the word extrovert and introvert come with a lot of polarization that's unfair. Extroverts are always yelling, introverts are always quiet. I think it's more just about personal tendencies. So I think if you had two people in a relationship exactly like me, that would just like spontaneously combust. But if you had two people like Mary, they might not go out of the house too often. So I think one time when I met Mary, and she won't mind me saying this because it's just people, you can't identify what it's like to live in someone else's mind, right? It's just maybe they'll invent that with like, Facebook 8.0. But when I met her, she would say, sometimes I don't like to go out at night and I cancel my plans if it's raining and I don't mind sitting on the couch. When I'm just like, get your umbrella and go out, because I'm such a people person. So if that just gives you context into that, but we fit each other well with what we like with TV, food, raising our children. I try to always say I'm really serious about helping people, but I don't take myself too seriously. So she's similar in that way. And she also has all these strengths like photography, being able to cook food for our family, that we complement each other well. But like, if you go to a party, you want me on your team, right? Because like, I'm going to be like the lead blocker for like all the questions, know? So
yeah, for sure. Oh, I love that. So tell us about your girls. Do they have similar personalities or are they super different?
They're drastically different. And I think, while I think it's sometimes an overused cliche, I think they take on roles like their parents and have tendencies. So Drew is much more like me and Daphne's much more like Mary. I think also this happens in this self-fulfilling prophecy of who looks like the other person. Yeah. So, Daphne looks a lot like Mary. Drew has developed, but at first she was just a baby with a 44-year-old man face. So, I mean, that was not, everyone said she was a cute baby, which she was, but she really looked a lot like me. Now that she has hair, that's like almost as long as yours and Mary's, like that. So Drew is more of a jokester, a little more rambunctious like me. Daphne has more qualities like Mary, but we try to blend both of us. But they're really awesome daughters. I think what's really been lost in this time on earth, and I hope people listen to this podcast decade from now, is I think people did not appreciate how challenged the pandemic was on people under 10. And we have not acknowledged that, like, hey, these people missed a whole year of interacting with their social development muscles. And we were so caught up in our own story of survival that we didn't pay attention to them. So I've tried really hard to honor that with them and be extra hands-on and do things that were just about them and have days just about them. So there's no such thing as a perfect parent, and pandemic parenting made it more difficult. But I want to acknowledge that they've done a great job existing through this time.
That's such a great point. I mean, I know our kids, their schools went back and forth, virtual. Oh, you're, somebody, and then there was like, I think it was around, Aaliyah, my daughter, had months and months, almost a full year at home. So that was tough. Yeah. And they would go back and then they would send them back home. And it was like a yo-yo. It was so unpredictable. And she is so social, and she really missed all of her people. But that's a great point, that every year is a milestone in development for a child. And so if they're not flexing those, those people, interpersonal skill muscles, it's like they kind of missed out on a year.
I mean, and that's why, we had Mary's job as a kindergarten teacher. We had Little House on the Kitchen Table Prairie for Daphne because she was homeschooled for a year, during this time. And I just think that, we don't realize, like, they're usually at school, you get to have recess with your friends like she does now, miss that for a year. Then we also, I've learned this thing. A lot of people say what they wish in life, they spent more time with the people they cared about. They spent more time with their family. Yeah. I want to share, the pandemic has shown me there's too much time with your family. And that goes for me too. People need a break from me. So I think it's also been unfair where people are like, don't you enjoy spending time with your kids all day? I'm like, Drew started when she was 2 during this. Mm-hmm. What kind of conversations am I going to have with her for 10 hours, right? So I think that it's really important that we look at the whole circle of Nacho life and how this has affected them. And I think they're coming out of it well, but I want to just make sure that I inspire them to get back. Because I think, it's like exercise at the gym. You guys are great role models for that. You don't go to the gym for a year. Mm-hmm. You don't just, the first day you go, it's not like you remember what it was like. So I think socialization is the same way, but they're great, awesome daughters, moderators of Dental Nachos. They love the city too. So really appreciate you asking.
Oh, that's amazing. So, okay, I know you have your basketball.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and your dream was to play in the NBA. So I'm assuming you played basketball growing up.
Yeah, I was really good 3-point shooter. I'm even good now at that. I love playing basketball. My parents were, I always joke that, my parents lied to me. They said I could be anything I wanted to be, but I can't play in the NBA. But in the full story, they were such great parents where at one point my dad was like, you might not play a professional sport, but he didn't totally crush my dreams. When I was younger, he would play along and say, if you want to play for sometimes he used to say, what's going to be a hard decision, Dad? Which NBA team I want to play for. So he probably was like such a great dad where he's like, yeah, that will be. But then I think, optimism and delusion, that's what Gary Vee talks a lot about, practical optimism. I talk about realistic positivity with dentistry. So when people are just like, dentistry is the greatest profession ever, that's just like, that's delusional thing to say. What would be really good to say is, dentistry offers really awesome opportunities, but it also comes with these annoying parts. So if you want to run, some of them are just the same as you and Josh. You run your own business. So you have friends who don't run their own business. So they have a lot less stress about not running their own business, but they may have more stress about the control because you don't have to ask anyone to be off. I just think we should provide more realistic positivity, or like Gary Vee says, practical optimism. But I really did play basketball. I was third I finished high in 3-point shots one year, and I still like basketball to this day. But yes, at some point I had to realize that dream was not going to come true.
Well, and what would dentistry have done without Paul Goodman?
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so the past 7 episodes, I have connected with women in dentistry and, about the world's messages and some of the world's memos that young women hear from a really early age. My daughter included, myself, and it really shapes their mindset and how they live their lives. One of these memos is a stereotype that drives me bananas. I thought we could talk about it since you're into sports and raising girls. It's the memo that girls aren't strong enough, fast enough as boys, and they're not taken as seriously when it comes to athletics because they're a girl. I wanted to reference this cool campaign I looked up again. I hadn't watched it in years. I don't know if you ever saw it. It was called Like a Girl campaign.
It sounds awesome. I don't know if I know it.
It launched in 2014. It was the Procter & Gamble brand. Anyways, they unveiled a 3-minute video that features, I'm just reading the description, but men and women who are asked to do things like a girl, in quotes. The short film quickly showed viewers that like a girl is often taken as an insult. And so, the actors, the men and women role playing, they were like giggling, flipping their hair and just flailing their arms and just being silly when asked to run like a girl or do anything like a girl. When the young girls came in and, like girls your age and mine, when they were asked to run, to fight or throw like a girl, the results were drastically different. Right. And when one little girl was asked what it means to run like a girl, she responded by saying, it means run as fast as you can.
Right. And
I think prompting the question, when did doing something like a girl become an insult? This ad got super popular and went on. They ran it during the Super Bowl 49. And it quickly became one of the most talked about commercials. Awesome. And it just helps spark, the conversation about change when it comes to what it means to run, throw, and pretty much do any activity like a girl. From watching you and Mary raising your daughters from a social media distance, and we've been in person with you as a family too, I can tell you are raising young ladies who aren't going to feel limited as far as their choices in life and will feel empowered to be themselves and chase their dreams, whether that's in athletics or anything else. So I'm wondering, what advice can you give any of the dads listening to this podcast on how to raise girls who don't limit themselves because they're female?
I love that thread. I love that question. First, a few things is that one, if anyone, thinks that girls cannot compete or do things at levels that are just insanely amazing, they're just not paying attention to what's happening with all sports out there. Because if you watch fields, there are women who are competing exactly like guys with their talent levels. There's not a lot of distinction. We had an awesome female baseball player play on our team when I was 12 years old. So there's an opportunity. And I mean, the way the strength, the speed, the fastness. So that's just, being unaware of women's athletics, right? At a certain level. I mean, one of the sports that women really just clearly get a lot of the credit is tennis, right? Tennis, but there's other sports where they're just doing amazingly well. What I would give is my dad was the leader. So people said, how did your dad raise Jill to be so confident? And he said, I don't understand the question because I raised you guys all the same while still embracing her uniqueness. So, embracing uniqueness is not a problem, right? Whether that's gender, whether that's personality type, we don't all have to be the same. But he said, I just raised you guys all the same. So people will often say, Jill is so confident. How did she become so confident? And that's because I think both of my parents, but my mom unfortunately passed away when Jill was, I think Jill was 17, I was 19, but my dad, when we were like 30, 36 and 38, he said, I raised you guys the same, but embracing uniqueness and embracing that there are things that girls do that guys don't do, but they can, and vice versa. And I think that not trying to let gender roles sort of influence how you do things, and also not forcing things on people either, right? So if a guy doesn't like sports, they'll make him play sports, right? Maybe they like theater instead. We did have this thing in our family, which I really liked, that you kind of had to try everything, right? Like you couldn't just say no before you tried it. So like with me with piano, I had to try it. Like I tried it, I don't like it, right? But my mom was great with that because I think, I have a thing with my whole company because, test don't guess. I mean, I hope I'm known that test don't guess. Like, I mean, just as simple as this, I'm going to this big conference to speak soon, which is great on associates. I'm excited. And they, were said, oh, we'll help you with this presentation and, we'll take your presentation. And we looked at it and I said, I don't know if that's exactly what I would do, but I want to test it because I don't know, maybe people will receive it better. And what's the worst thing that can happen, right? When you create boundaries where there's no real bad thing, let somebody try out cooking classes. So I just think that I strive to also, I read a lot of things and I try to say things to Daphne and Drew. And I've heard this where it's like, you're super creative instead of you're super pretty. You're super strong instead of this, but also you can still be pretty too. And you can still, that's still important, but just kind of make all your compliment toppings well-rounded. I also learned this, and I've been doing this one a lot, and this would go for either gender, but especially girls, is instead of saying, I'm so proud of you, say, you really should be proud of yourself. So like, because then it's like, it's not putting it like, oh, make your parents proud. I'm like, so if Daphne goes and talks to people and makes new friends, it's like, you should be proud of yourself because that's not easy to do, Daphne. So I just try, and also don't judge myself too harshly. I mean, parenting is a very difficult game. You're going to miss shots, right? Sometimes you turn around and you respond to your 7-year-old the way you would to a 37-year-old. And you're like, man, that was way too intense. So, that's sort of my best ways. Try not to set. My dad raised Jill, not really creating huge distinctions in our family. So he didn't really understand when people said, how did you make Jill so confident? He goes, I don't understand the question. I raised her just like Paul and Jeff. So
that is awesome. It actually reminds me of my dad as well. I grew up in a really loving home and I'm so thankful for my parents. But there were three, myself, I'm the oldest, and then I had 2 sisters and my brother was the youngest. But he raised us all the same. And our natural personalities just thrived in that environment. And we're all very, very different. I'm very driven, direct, extroverted. My brother is the complete opposite of me. He's a guy. So I agree with that and support that like completely. Awesome. However, I do get Leah and I do get really excited when we watch like the Marvel movies and, the ladies step up and kick everybody's butt.
That's great. We wear superhero costumes. I think that's awesome. And then I think also, on the other way, you have an awesome son, and Alan Stern, who I love, is doing stuff on Men's Health Month. I think there's also now sometimes this pendulum shifts so far that they sometimes forget about guys. So we should also just honor and acknowledge, things that, it's cliche that don't cry, don't get mental health counseling. I mean, these are all things that are very toxic, right? I mean, there's nothing that your gender role defines that you can't feel a certain way about something. So we should just, what I think is really cool, and I don't know why I do this, Joanna. I watch so many cooking shows, but I can't cook anything. It's very weird. It's inconsistent. But think about men cooking has really just, men were always supposed to be chefs, and I know Top Chef, but that's kind of really been broadened, I think, over the past 2 decades. And I think it's great. You know, I still can't do it. I'd like to learn sometime. I don't know if I'm too old, but I just think we can have more pendulum shifting, more expansion of honoring these things for both for men and women. They'll just make things better.
Yeah. Well, actually, Josh does more of the cooking in our family and the meal prepping for the evenings. And then I get, we just divide and conquer. And he enjoys it more than I do.
Right.
And I think for the longest time, I beat myself up because of the gender stereotype that women are meant to be in the kitchen and love it and just slaving away all the time. I'm like, I'd rather play with my kids.
Right.
I don't want to do that. Yeah. So it's how you prefer to spend your time and just your own DNA. And
for sure.
So, yeah, I love that.
One of the best books, is my coach gave me years ago, and you probably know it. And it's called Strengths Finders. Oh, and yeah. It really
love
is
that book.
We get like, I think, especially kids of the 80s, it's like, work on your weaknesses. But sometimes it's really not worth it. Sometimes it's not even a weakness. And Gary Vee talks it, you just don't like it. Yeah. Right. So like, if you don't do something, I can't not helping Daphne and Drew get to bed. That's not fair. But I don't like this other thing. It doesn't mean that I have to spend so much time and effort trying to make myself like it if someone else in my household does it and likes it.
Yeah, I could not agree more. Oh my gosh. I didn't even know you knew about Strength Finders. Okay. We'll have you on another podcast and we can talk about it.
Sure.
Because I'm obsessed with Strength Finders. So let's talk about dentistry a little bit. How did you get into dentistry and the story behind who inspired you?
It's a really great question. I've been asked it a lot. So a couple of things. As growing up in the 90s, I wanted to be a doctor, dentist, or lawyer, not a surprise. So George Clooney was on ER. I thought that would be cool. Tom Cruise and A Few Good Men. And my dad, the dentist. And my parents always said, Paul, you argue a lot. You could be a lawyer. It wasn't always the most compliment, but I always would kind of have an answer for everything. Yeah. Not always in an obnoxious way, sometimes in an agitating and irritating way. But, what my dad said to my brother and I was, being your own boss is a really great thing. He liked helping people. So that was the lanes I was in. So then when I went to see Villanova, great basketball team, they had a 7-year dental program. And I thought, I always liked efficiencies in general, right? I always do the work while you're doing the work. I like walking places. So I said, oh man, 7 years, I'm going to get in. So I applied to the dental program. So I did 3 years at Villanova, 4 years at University of Pennsylvania. Your first year of dental school would count towards your Villanova transcripts so that you would get your college degree if you want to stop after that. One of the things that really irritates me is when people say to people before they become a dentist, if you really like becoming a dentist, it's worth it, right? If it's really your dream, it's worth it, right? If you like it, it's worth it. How do you know if you've never done something, right? If you're going to eat, Mom makes great Korean food. Someone's like, I got to sign up for one food for the rest of my life, Korean food. Have you ever tasted it? No, I haven't tasted it. So I think what I'm trying to do work and doing is I am super mentally flexible, super adaptable. I probably would be Paul in 20 different careers. Mm-hmm. I don't have this thing where I was born to be a dentist. I have to be, and my dad didn't either. He's like, I like doing it. I like helping people, but dentistry is my profession, not my hobby. One of my business coaches, when I started Dental Nachos, was like, everything you do, Paul, has nothing to do with dentistry. You could do this for any industry. You just happen to be with dentists. So I'm on this thing where I probably have 20 jobs. And I know there's other people who musicians, the only thing they could possibly do. Yeah. So I kind of have a mentally flexible attitude towards it where I love working with people. So my dad was my inspiration. I did every job in the dental office before I went to dental school. I like jobs that go by fast. So I've been a waiter, a server, and a dentist. So when you work with people, your day goes by fast. Mm-hmm. The pandemic has taught me what it's like to sit in front of computers and work, which has value too, right? Mm-hmm. This is crazy. So you guys are awesome, Joanna. And I don't know exactly what you guys do, but my sense is that if tomorrow somebody's website that was due in 3 months was bothering you, you could just be like, hey, we're going to put it to the side and work on it on Monday, right? Whatever is bothering me. I can't do that. I can't be like, hey, Mrs. Smith, your filling's really annoying. Sit here for 2 days and we'll get back to you. That is one of the biggest stresses of being a dentist, the real-time deadlines. The benefit of your day going by fast, the other side, when patients are acting crazy like every day, and maybe one of your listeners will value this. So when you're in the dental chair, when your patient's acting up, right? They just don't get the program, right? They're not opening, they're moving, their body language. I'm like, we're in this thing together. Full contact arts and crafts is dentisting. So this is what I say. If let's say you're that Joanna, I say, hey, Joanna, I know this is your favorite place to be. And they laugh because it's not. But if you could drop your mouth off like your car, it would be easier for both of us. And then they know to start acting right, as my mom would say, because I'd say, I would love for you to drop off your molar and go shopping, but that doesn't happen. We're in this together. Yeah. And I think that that is one of the best parts of dentistry, but also one of the most acutely intense. And we reframe stress in our organization. No one's allowed to say stress because it's a word to me that really bothers me. They can say intensity. So they say, oh, it seems like there's a lot of intensity here at Dental Nachos. I say yes, because stress to me is just automatically deemed as negative, and intensity is different. You're playing in the NBA championship and you feel stressed, that's where you want to be, right? You're speaking in front of 500 people and you feel stressed, that's where you want to be. So it's, what's the difference between intensity and toxic stress? I want to do a whole thing on what's the difference between friction and toxicity. But that's how I got involved in dentistry. My dad was a great role model. He left it at the office. I did see how challenging it was to run a dental business. I did see how challenging it was to deal with people, which I think has gotten, people are people, Joanna, they're the same, right? But running the dental business, I mean, I've been a dentist for 19 years. I can say this. It's got increasingly more complex every year.
Yeah.
To run a dental business.
So you and your brother, Jeff Goodman, practiced together in Pennington, New Jersey. Yeah. At Pennington Dental Associates. So is this multiple locations or?
We have 2 locations, okay. One in Ewing, one in Pennington.
Okay.
If you think of it like a giant ship and a tiny ship based on production, not based on location. We work in this amazing house office, which is very quaint.
I saw on your website, I saw the photo. It looks just beautiful, like a restored old home, which I'm a fan of.
So people love that, right? But as the people who work inside there every day, and my brother's done a great job enhancing it. I was working in an 8-year-old child's bedroom from the 1930s doing implant dentistry, kind of a struggle, right? Yeah. So when you go to a small B.O.B. in Philly and you're like, this is great. The server's like, I knock over people's wine glasses because you're all so close together. So we have a 5-operatory and a 3-operatory practice. Our Ewing location does a lot less in production, but really nice place. Our Pennington location does implants. I wanted to make this Best Buy feel. I love Best Buy from the 80s, where you have a 16-year-old buying a CD. I know they're not a thing anymore. You got someone buying their first college laptop. You got a 50-year-old buying a flat screen TV when they were cool. So we have incorporated specialty care into it because I'm a big momentum person. When people have to leave your office, they lose momentum. We still refer to outside specialists. We don't do everything, but we do a lot with implant dentistry inside of our practice.
So how do you like working with your siblings? Because you also referenced, and Jill, your sister, works in the practice as well. Is that right?
Jill works more with Dental Nachos now. She has done stuff in practice, but she works in there. I'm like one of my favorite shows was The Good Place. I don't know if you saw The Good Place, but it's really good. And they talk a lot about utilitarian ethics. So it's like, it's a challenging thing. So there's all these different ethical principles, not to get into it, but like, I'm a big, what provides the most good in this scenario? So when you work with a sibling or a family member, and I use my dad, I never would have spent as much time with my dad as I would have if I didn't work with him. Okay. So that is what I value. But I never would have gotten as many arguments with my dad if we didn't work together. So now Mary works with me. So I have this amazing opportunity to work with Mary at Dental Nachos, marketing, photography, and we get to spend more time physically together, mentally together, remote together, and we get to work on this awesome project together. But we also get to fight over this awesome project together. And fighting is friction, right? Friction is that. And fighting is not always bad. I mean, fighting is too negative, friction. So same thing with my brother, same thing with my sister. So I value the opportunity to see the people I care about a lot. And I am very good at seeing the big picture and saying, yes, this is part of it. And we would have this. I just said this the other day, when someone was like, what's it like to work with family? I go, well, your family has your back in a way that other people don't have your back. Yeah. But you also feel very free to talk in a way to family that you wouldn't to someone who's not family.
Yeah.
To me, that's the 2 sides of it.
Mm-hmm. That's very true. And sometimes that, because I mean, Josh and I work together, obviously. And so that's a great kind of way to look at it. You get it's high trust. So that part we love, right? You do have each other's back. I will always support him 1,000% and vice versa. But however, sometimes we do, like he'll say things to me and I'm like, hey, if I was this colleague, you would have never said it like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
and this is what I have to say too. So Gary Vee talks about this. He's like, when do you stop worrying about your business? He's like, I'll tell you when. When do you stop worrying about your children? Oh yeah, never. So I embrace that, right? But also the way we worry about our children has a cycle of growing up, eventually leaving the house-ish. You know, I even lived at my dad's house partly the time when I was out of my residency, part in Philly, part with him. But I will share this, and it's authentic, that if you're working on a business project with someone and you work on it for decades, sometimes that life cycle becomes more morale draining than improving. So I think that dentists often think like, I got to put my head down and work for 30 years with my brother, right? That may transform. It's transforming for us now. I'm not in the practice full time anymore, and that looks different, right? And it doesn't better or worse. Maybe I'll be in the practice more in 5 years. Maybe I'll be in the practice less than 5 years. So I enjoy the transformation of the business life.
yeah.
And I think if it stays static, like I don't think any marriage would last if someone stayed a 3-year-old for 20 years.
Correct.
That would not be healthy for everybody, including the business. So I don't know if that helps you understand my attitude towards it, but you know.
Completely. Well, yeah, I think it needs to be a fluid thing, if I can bring it correctly. Yeah. And morph and change and grow. And then at some point, if it's not a great partnership or a good situation anymore, you adapt and, you know, kind of
and
like
things can have endpoints. And we have different relationships with people. So you don't unbecome someone's brother, right? Mm-hmm. But, you know, eventually you're going to sell your practice and still be your brother. I mean, neither of us want to work when we're 85 and 80 being like, what's the schedule on Dentrix, right? Like that sounds like a nightmare, right? So I think it's like embracing what's happening now and always be treatment planning in dental term, your future for maximum happiness.
Yeah, well, that's good.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's a good quote right there.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to talk a little bit about Dental Nachos and tell us the real heart and the why behind you creating Dental Nachos and what made you want to help dentists in this way.
So I love the movies where they start at the end and go back to the beginning. So this is it. So I was walking in Center City, Philadelphia on Broad Street. You're right near the hotel you stayed. And I hear someone shout at me, hey, you. So if you're in Center City, Philadelphia, and someone shouts at you, hey, you have to be ready for anything. It could be a disgruntled Eagles fan. It could be someone saying, Jim Gaffigan has a joke. They don't say, oh, where's Elvez? They go, I need Elvez. Tell me where Elvez is, right? So I turn around, I see this confused 50-ish-old woman, and she said, what is Dental Nachos? And I said, great question. A lot of people ask me that. That's my Paul tip. For when they ask you a weird question, just say, oh, great question. A lot of people ask me that. Why is your website so expensive? Great question. A lot of people ask me that. Makes them feel normal. Gives you a chance to say, I said, Dental Nachos is a lot like a Mr. Rogers neighborhood for dentists. Mm-hmm. Dentists have it tougher than you think. And we create a community for them to be kinder to each other, connect with each other, and work on their business, right? Because there's a business component for it. And then she walked away and said, I really like that. I said, you could tell you're a dentist, right? So that's the end story from a few months ago. The beginning story is 2005. What really bothered me was my dad said how dentists hated each other. And he had a partner. So him and his partner represented the good. But he said dental school makes people compete. I call it the Dental Student Hunger Games. So early in my career, I created a study club called the Rising Dentist Study Club of Philadelphia. I printed out the flyers on my OG Mac. I put them in envelopes. Remember, this was very hard doing. It's like Paul Revere is one of my idols too. I don't know if you ever read the book, Never Eat Alone, but they talk about Paul Revere in that book. And it's an amazing story. And I mean, I love history in Philadelphia. People just think Paul Revere rode with his horse and yelled the British are coming. He was the ultimate connector. He knew everybody in town. He created relationships with them. They let him put little things in watchtowers and do this. So I had to kind of Paul Revere this study club, but I would get a bar that I worked at because I was a server. I would get sponsors just to pay for the food. And I would ask my friends to lecture for free. And the goal of the study club was if dentists met each other early in their career, hopefully they would hate each other less later. That was the whole goal. So it sounds a lot like Dental Nachos, right? So I did this for 10 years. I would have these study clubs. There was no agenda. I wasn't even a broker then. I did love speaking. I spoke for implants, but I was really doing it for the good of it, right? But it got exhausting. I was growing up. I was getting married, but I always had this one event once a year where I would tell people, give me $300 for the day. Joanna and Josh's give me $500 for a table. I'd get up like $6,000. I'd spend like $5,995. And I would put on this event. And people loved it. And I still strive to do that now. But in 2017, when Facebook groups are becoming popular, I basically took that attitude and put it into a Facebook group. And I said, this was my thing. I said to Mary, what should I call it? And she said, you do a lot of things, broker, speaker, dentist. Let's call it Dental Nachos, like toppings. I do love Mexican food. And I said, maybe a few hundred people will join it to talk about implants and practice management. That was my thing. Maybe so this was a happy accident, but I wanted to bond people together, whether it's 100 people or 1,000,000 people. No one ever believes this, Joanna. They don't, but maybe you believe it because you know me. I really, if I say it doesn't matter to me or I don't care, it sounds mean. It has no impact on me as a person if there's 100 people or 100,000 people in Dental Nachos. There's value for there being 100 people. There's value there being 1,000,000 people. Of course, now I have sponsors, so I want to have a wider audience, but I created like a free park where people could hang out, learn, talk to each other online. And then I have sponsors that are around the park that sell things like IPA, pizza, and flowers. We've got Rittenhouse Square, but instead of that, they sell websites, technology, supplies. And I'm not one of those guys like I had it so tough back in the day, but my dad and I had to get on a train and go to New York City to see a composite carpule back in 2004. So it's pretty cool that we can just open up our phone, scroll on it, and see what people can buy. So I don't know why dentists don't love this. I mean, most of them do, but some dentists are weird about being sold things. I have this weird technique. I don't know if you've tried to use it before in your life, Joanna. If you're at a park and they're selling something and someone says, hey, do you want to buy my hand moisturizer? You can just be like, hey, no, I don't want to buy it, and move on. But what if someone shows up with really dry hands and wants the moisturizer? Can't that stand service both people? So in my joking way, I try to get dentists to expand that we should feel great. And there's so many good Facebook groups, you know, Mark Costas, amazing friend, and groups. Like, I love being a consumer of this as well. But Dental Nachos is there to create a community to fight the dental student hunger games, improve their business, help people connect, and really make life more fun. And it's become somewhat of a Nacho Frankenstein at times. It's not easy to have 35,000 people attached to your phone, right?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if like Mary was a kindergarten teacher, and when she had 30 kids, like someone would be arguing and she wouldn't see it, right? Because she's focused on like the art project. You know, people will just open up a message to me on Facebook Messenger and go, can you believe what happened in Dental Nachos? Why don't you see this, Paul? I go, I don't know. There's almost 1,000 comments a day, crazy dentist. Could you tell me missed one? Like I think people think I live inside the group watching everybody, you know? So
everybody cut Paul some slack. That is a lot of people to manage. Oh my God.
Yeah. So some people will be like, I don't like what someone said. And I go, I'm with you. I'll manage it. I might delete it, but you can just not read it, right? You can just like, if you go to Thanksgiving dinner, you got a crazy uncle who talks about a conspiracy theory, just don't sidle over to him, right? Just let him be, right?
Completely stay away. What's the demographic on the whole of dentists in Dental Nachos? Is it super diverse, or is there like a specific generation that you typically attract?
Not surprisingly. And I have, I'm sure Apple, it's like, they're like, the iPhone does so many things, like mainly I use it for texting, right? And like, but we made all these things that we're proud of. So I want to share that I have a Facebook group, an Instagram community, a text message community, an email community. So I have all these different communities, but I'm not surprisingly, Facebook trends to like 25 to 34 and 35 to 44. So 25 to 44 probably make up 80% of the people. Then if I hop on over to Instagram, that's going to trend younger for that. Yeah. So in general, I am concerned that not enough younger dental people, whether you're hygienist or sponsors or dentists, are joining Facebook, because there's so much amazing free value to learn. Yeah. And some of I try to screenshot my SOAs, sense of accomplishments, we call them, because sometimes you only think of something negative. But some people do say to me on Instagram, I'm only on Facebook because of Dental Nachos, which I'm very proud of.
Yeah.
which means like they literally only go, and I tell people to do that, go dental student. I don't care if you think you're too cool for Facebook. There's Business of Dentistry, Dental Success Network, Dental Nachos, Dental Clinical Pearls. We've set up these free stands for you guys to learn. You're a nacho nuts individual if you have such a hard line on Facebook when you're on TikTok, Instagram, and that's just join Facebook too. So that demographic is 25 to 44, make up most of it, but we have pre-dents in there, and then we have awesome 60-year-old plus dentists and people contributing to.
Yeah, that's great. That's funny. Our team at Studio 88 is made up of almost completely millennials, and then we have some Gen Xers, but they also, most of them are not on Facebook, and we kind of, and then Josh and I are, and we're like, our entire profession of dental is on Facebook. And we also encourage them, you know, it's not like you have to, I mean, like our creatives don't have to get on and make friends with everybody. That's not their purpose. They don't interface with clients, but there's so much they can learn about the profession being on Facebook.
I'll tell you, this is how you get them to watch. You know, when people go, oh, do you like ever sit at like those restaurants and like the people watch and watch people go by and just like drink your drink?
Yeah.
Say that's what Facebook is like. Just go dentist people watch and you'll learn about the industry. I mean, it's always about incentivizing people. I tell younger dentists, they're like, I don't want to be on Facebook because I'm on Instagram and I don't do Facebook. And like, okay, do you not want a job? Like, no, I want a job. Like, do you want to make more money? Like, I want that. I'm like, well, go on Facebook.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because those, you're going to be able to learn things to help you with those two things. But I totally get the generational struggle.
Yes, completely. Well, and thankfully we have Instagram, so that helps fill that gap. You talk often about the 4 major pain points or decisions, transitions that dentists face when stepping into dentistry and, you know, moving along in their career. Can you just cliff notes of what are those 4? I mean, and then also answer, do the majority of those dentists, do they fail chronically at those transitions?
So what I share is I talk about MOs, missed opportunities for stuff. So 4 major points: find job, buy practice, hire associate, sell practice. But it's all about the dashes. So there's that poignant poem, Birth to Death, with the dash, and live your dash. What happens in that dash? That's the story. Well, now let's talk about the dentisting life. What happens? Dental school dash, find first job. Find first job dash, buy practice. That could be 3 years, that could be 13 years. But find ways to make your dentisting dashes more successful, less stressful, and less likely to make you want to cry inside. And what I would share with them is to focus on things that have impacts on those dashes, not what dental school teaches you. So if you were running a restaurant, dental school would say, spend 90% of your time on knowing how to make pasta and 10% of your time on customer service. That restaurant would go out of business tomorrow. But restaurant industries know you need to have a well-balanced approach to your business, your product, things like that. So I talk about your dentisting core, clinical skills, mind skills, word skills at the center of your heart. So my Cliff Notes version is work on your dentisting core, not just bicep curls, and you'll be more successful at all those stages.
So let me ask you, because that, for me, my mind goes immediately to mindset and also mental health struggles. And we know that so many dentists, I mean, dentistry is not exempt from it, and it's full of people dealing with anxiety, depression, suicide, so many symptoms of deeper issues, right? Yeah. And so did you personally, on your journey through dentistry, did you deal with any of that?
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's like asking a firefighter, when you fight fires, you afraid of the fire? They better say yes, right? Because if you don't say yes, I mean, I read this quote where like in war, there's 2 types of people. One who looks like they're totally cool because they know everything that's going on, or other people look like they're totally cool because they're about to get shot. So what I'm sharing is, and I'm misphrasing it a little, is it's supposed to feel that way, right? Parenting, being a new mom, supposed to feel exhausting. Being a dad with 2 children, you're supposed to have concern over providing financially. Those gender roles could be reversed. The mom could work and have that. The dad could be at home. So what we need to do is bring to light that it's normal to feel that way, but it's not normal to become overly obsessed with these things. And dentistry makes you obsessed about things that just don't matter. One of my mentors sadly passed away suddenly. I never expected it. Massive cardiac event. He's not on the planet anymore. It happened to my dad. My dad had an amazing life, and he would have said, don't stress so much over things that don't matter. But when you're in dental school and when you're a new dentist, people get you very confused. This happens with how people dress themselves. If I don't have the right outfit, people aren't going to like me. This happened. Gary Vee talks about this. So overly judging yourself on things that don't matter leads to this. And it's I mean, no one's ever in perfect shape. No one's ever in perfect mental health state, but getting tools that can support you. And I think the whole point of Dental Nachos is to try to just make people feel less alone. I think that's the worst feeling in the world. I did a thing for an ASDA group, and Mark Costas had this Jack story about this dentist who's still working at 73 and didn't get it right. I have this Carl story about somebody who got it right and retired. And I said, Mark Costas is one of my friends in my phone that I know I can go to make me feel less alone. And when it was the pandemic and nobody knew what was happening, both of us were texting each other and talking on the phone about what are we doing about these events. And that made us both feel less alone. So I just think whatever you can do, create a network to make yourself feel less alone, because dentistry and life is insanely awesome, insanely annoying, and also sometimes awful.
Yeah, I've talked with so many dentists on the Story Project podcast, but just also, in person at events, on the phone, whatever. And there's just this reoccurring theme common thread throughout all of the conversations, that people feel so often so isolated.
Yeah.
And it's really tragic. It's very sad. And I think part of my passion and heart is to put a spotlight on dentist stories and get them to open up, because opening up and us being vulnerable about our struggles and what we have gone through in our journeys, someone out there listening is literally living in that, that very moment. And you've just immediately helped them feel less isolated.
Yeah. But I mean, a quick story. I know we have to wrap up in a minute, but a woman, sometimes doing my job comes with awesomeness, but it's also can be overwhelming to me. So because I get sometimes 9, 10 Facebook messages a day from people I don't know with major problems, right? And I'm not a mental health therapist. I'm not an attorney. I'm not an accountant. So I always point them in the right direction. But this one awesome woman is a recovering alcoholic. She's having a really tough time. And I posted for her anonymously, and she got 10 awesome comments, but more importantly, 3 people reached out to me to connect with her and said, I had that same problem. And then I sent those to her, and now she feels more supported. So that's why I feel that I'm just so glad to be part of this solution, not the whole solution, where people can go into this community and say, I have this really big problem. Who else has had it? How can you help? And I really think there's nothing better than that in life. I mean, money's great. Cool things are great, but feeling like you could be supported at your worst time, I think, is kind of the greatest thing of all.
Last words. Can you share a few words of encouragement to all the dentists struggling right now, the ones that come to your group and feel alone and ask questions? What would you say to them?
I would say that one of my favorite people is Kristen Bell. And Kristen Bell wrote The World Needs More Purple People. And we need to remember that, and that means that it's not about blue, it's not about red. Purple people work hard, ask good questions, and be that purple person to make things 0.1% better. Dentists judge themselves on needing to solve a problem too quickly. So whatever you could do, one thing better, listen to a podcast, have a better attitude about this, and just build this 0.1% better without judging yourself. Just find one thing that makes it a little bit better. And that could be as simple as posting on a Facebook group that, hey, this is a struggle for me. Is this a struggle for anyone else? If anybody wants me to do that anonymously, I'd be glad to do it for them.
That's awesome, man. You have such a good heart. Dr. Paul Goodman, thank you so much for being on this, the Story Project podcast with me today. I know you don't have a lot of time, and you made time for this, so I really appreciate it. If people want to follow you and stay in touch with you, what is the best place? I know there's multiple places on social. Where should they Seth Godin's my favorite people marketers. And he said, can people stop being like, go to / blah, 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 because nobody stops the podcast and writes it down. So I always go, what's most likely? Dentalnachos.com is our website. You can get to anyone through that. Dentalnachos.com is our website. People can email me at paul@dentalnachos.com. I would love to hear from you. Awesome. Okay. Sounds good.
Thanks, Joanna.
I follow Paul. It's extremely entertaining on Instagram, Facebook, I mean, everywhere. If you're not following Dr. Goodman, you should today. I encourage you to. So thank you to our audience for being with us and listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and it would mean the world to me if you guys would subscribe to this podcast, leave a review. I love this amazing tribe of people in dentistry. They're really like world changers. So that's a wrap. Paul Goodman, and we'll see you guys all next time.
Thanks, Joanna.